in this early stage, it's mostly about hiring the right people. And so yeah, so in terms of like hiring the right people, you already talked a little bit about this, but I think my main worry at the moment is that you look at people, you look at CVs, and it says great things, and it tells you how good they are, theoretically, but you won't really know how well they will work as a team, how good they are in collaboration, how they contribute to the culture of the company. And my feeling is that building the culture, the right culture in the early days is crucial, not only to grow the company, but also to attract the right talent to it. So my question is, how do we kind of figure out in the early days whether these are the right people? You also talked about the grit and resilience. So how do we measure these aspects?
Yep. So 3 things. First is, I think it's good to be very intentional about culture. I think it's smart that you're saying, look, culture and coherence of the team really matters. So, for example, the Netflix culture document, which they published kind of accidentally, is actually a very smart thing, I think, for any company to do. Matter of fact, if I were to tell my younger LinkedIn self, one of the things I would tell myself is to create a culture deck and intentionally define a sharp culture from the very beginning, and do that explicitly. Second thing is, references matter more than interviews. You obviously want both. But to give you a sense of when I'm hiring for important positions, one of the things I will try to do is I will try to get connected to 3 to 7 I'm going to take this candidate seriously. I will try to get 3 to 7 connections with people who have worked with this person before I've even interviewed them. Right? And I will try to get some information, either in phone or email. Obviously, people are very hesitant about negative referential email, although frequently, for example, like one of the techniques I'll use, I'll drop them an email and say, rate this person from 1 to 10. And usually when you get a 7, that means they're not worth hiring, they're not worth talking to. Right? So now, if you get a 10, you usually write back and say, do you understand what 10 means? Like, this is the best person ever? And if they say yes, you're like, great, that's very useful information. But if you get a section of selection of 8s and 9s, then it's like, oh, I should invest more. I should maybe call, I should do more reference checking. And reference checking is much more important because the kinds of questions like grit, like persistence, like will they deal with the uncertainties in an environment? Will they be good collaborators in stress and under fire? Will they be learners and adapters? And CV doesn't tell you any of that stuff, right? So that's the kind of thing from referencing. So that would be the second thing to do. And then I think the third is essentially to try to make, one of the things, like for example, one of the questions that I almost always ask, and this is kind of in the interview, is thinking about it as like, all right, like for example, like I'll say this to entrepreneurs, I'll say this to people that I'm interviewing, is I'll say, all right, in your last job, what did you most learn and what did you most fuck up? Because if they say, well, I was too perfectionist, you're like, okay, you're either not being honest with me or you're not learning. I mean, there is true perfectionism, which is a real big problem, right? Or I worked too hard. Well, okay, right? It's asking that learning because, by the way, true learners will usually have something really crisp that's interesting, right? And if you go, oh yeah, that's a good thing to learn, I see how you learn that, I see that's smart, and you have an answer to, I am learning, then that usually is a good fit for the kind of learning culture that you need in a startup.